Thank you all for joining. Sorry, we're running a couple minutes behind. Technical issues. Yeah, just a warning, anyone using Zoom in the next couple months, Zoom's doing a bunch of upgrades, and so you're going to have to check for updates if you use it. So thanks again for joining, everyone. We see your names. Actually, I'm going to copy these down too. Awesome. So please use your chat Q&A tabs. And honestly, since I recognize all your names again, feel free to raise your hand. We can unmute you if it's easier to talk with us. We'll stop for questions throughout. Again, family-friendly program. Please be on your best behavior. And feel free to take notes and have a snack while you're with us tonight. Nicole will be moderating if I miss something or Tony misses something, and she'll help interject with some questions for us. So on to the next slide. There we go. All right, so we have Tony Santoro with us, and I put in Las Vegas because that is his email address also. You can also find him on Facebook, and so he makes all of these lures by hand. You'll be able to look those up. And in the chat, it should have popped up for everyone with our regulations and where to put questions as well. So thanks for joining us tonight, Tony. All right, so Tony, I'm gonna show a video and then have Tony go into what they are and how they work so well. And so this is just one of the special ones that he's been making lately. There's all kinds of different options. And I don't think I put in that bone one. That one's pretty neat, especially for along the Colorado River system, anything where fish are feeding on off-white or white fish, that bone color shimmers really nice in the water too. So Tony will go through all of his lures or some of the lures and some of the test videos that he's made. And then we'll go into some science behind them as far as why they work and why you want these monster baits. All right, so I'm gonna hit play and make sure I'm sharing with sound. There's sound. All right.
That's pretty cool. You know, it'd be awesome if a fish just smashed that thing right now. Yeah.
You're still muted, Abby.
Tony, do you want to talk about why you make them a certain way and how they swim so well?
Sorry, I was muted. There's different kinds. The one you just showed is specifically cut in a way to keep it on the surface or right below the surface. Some of the other ones I have, if you troll it or cast or retrieve or troll at a slower speed, they will stay right on or near the surface, or you can go faster and they'll dive and have the same type of action. But like you said, a lot of those fish, they look for that white silvery. Everything I do is got a white silvery belly, like a trout or a shad, shiny. And the black one is, I believe it, and a lot of guys that fished on there believe that on a close to or a full moon night, the black makes an even more definite silhouette when the fish are looking up to the bait. So the black, they will flash on the side, might catch the moon and flash at the surface. The black is definitely like a nighttime thing, but most of the other baits are for our area, especially trout and shad patterns with silvery white bellies, because the fish are always looking up, to find a bait, sitting there waiting. And the action of the plug style bait is like a dying, stressed fish. And look at it as a easy target.
Awesome. Any questions in specific, any specific questions from the audience? I'll show a few others and why they all move differently. I was, as I was going through and making some of these slides too for you, I definitely saw a lot on the different tails too. Because there's the flat back, and then there's the more, I guess it'd be like the actual fish one, which will be the last video, I think, where it's more of the horizontal, like natural.
My mic keeps muting itself or something. I don't know what's happening. Yeah, the long paddle tail is for that, to make the action and the noise and the splashing and the thumping. On the glide baits, the regular real-looking fin is more to guide the fish in a swimming action, a gliding smooth. Because it's either like a dying, stressed bait, or it's just a slow-moving trout that's just in the current or swimming on that you want to That's why the glide baits have the regular tail, just to keep it upright and keep it doing its normal swim.
Awesome. And then we have one live question. Does the action have more to do with the connectors between the pieces or the shape of the pieces themselves?
Definitely has to do with the angles that are cut between the pieces. Because I've done a lot of research and prototypes, and that super chunk that you showed in the top water video, I really changed the angles on between the front, the head and the tail. I really had to steepen the angles to get that really wide flap. So some guys like a tighter wiggle type, then the joint is closer and tighter. And then if you want to do the S motion, you have to open up those joints and give it more room to swim.
All right, that was a good question. Awesome. All right, next one. A couple other paint patterns. We have this one. So we'll mute ourselves again. So with this one, so one thing I remember hearing too about all these, so actually, if everybody wants to realize how big these baits and plugs are, it's pretty neat. It's really hard to actually find a safe box to put these in. So 16 inches, if you can, 12 inches is a foot, right? But 16 inches is 4 more inches. So this is a pretty epic plug. And this is especially like somewhere where you have brown trout chasing rainbow trout, full size, so monster browns, or the river system where the stripers are going after the rainbows. This is really, really fun. Or where there's really awesome bass, black bass, largemouth and smallmouth chasing fish. And sometimes you've seen the pictures with the tail sticking out of the mouth. All these plugs work really good for them. But 16 inches is over a foot. So it's pretty impressive how awesome and well these swim. Sorry, I was thinking, also, does it have to do with the presentation, right? So like if you go too fast or too slow as you're stripping it in, it won't swim as well, right?
Can you hear me? I want to make sure my mic was on. Yeah, it some of the guys that fish my lures, and they use it, if they troll it with a kayak and a computer, they've got it dialed down to where that lure right there swims their favorite at 1.7 miles an hour. Like there's an exact speed and I made videos today and I had to relearn, how fast or how slow to keep it on the surface or make it dive. Yeah, the presentation changes with it also makes a difference the length of line that you have. Like when I troll it, I put it out 150, 200 yards. So it's far away from the boat and the line stays lower to the water. It definitely changes the action.
Awesome. And one of the comments is the clearness of the water. Was this Lake Mead, Mojave, or Beach, Boulder City?
That's me testing the lure on the dock at Willow Beach.
Oh, Willow Beach. Okay, so yes.
They were moving.
So Mojave,
they were moving or something. Yeah.
Mojave has really awesome clear water. It is definitely tinted green,
Yep.
but it's epic how far down you can see. And if anyone's heard of Emerald Bay, and it's one of the glass waters, and it just glows green in the afternoon when the light cave. So if you haven't been there, I recommend it before summer, but during summer it's pretty impressive how many people fit on the river in that. And do you right in the day would be the best time to fish with these to get the?
No, it's not. It's a tough thing on the river. It's tough because sometimes they're feeding at night, or it depends on the time of the season, which season of the year. My two biggest fish were caught in a completely clear, non-cloudy, sunny morning at 10:30 in the morning, and you saw how that how my buddy joked about how great would it be if the fish came up and smashed it right now. That happened at 10:30 in the morning. I thought it was done for the day, coming back to the marina, and gagoosh, it just it came up and just in the middle of the morning, it just smashed it on the surface. So you never know when they're going to hit. But then, like I said, one of my friends took out the black lure on a full moon night. He caught 6 fish, which is amazing. For one night on the river, he caught 6 big fish on the river. So sometimes at night, sometimes if I'm fishing on the river, it's usually 2 or 3 in the morning until sunrise, somewhere in that time frame. Because they usually right before sunrise is when they bite on the river. But then it could be something different at another location. I've caught fish on the river lower in the river in Lake Mojave in the dark. They come up before the sun comes up. So, and they usually are deeper there. So these are made to float, and they'll dive. If you pull them a good speed, they'll dive pretty good, 4, 5, 6 feet. But if you want them to get really deep, you got to get like a planer board, like a diver. You put like a diver on your line, that pulls them down to like 40, 50, 60 feet, and then you put a leader out to the lure. And I've used them that way too for deeper waters. And when you, that's how I plan to use it. You mentioned that big trout would go for them. I have yet to take these big monster plugs to. I want to go to like Fish Lake, Utah, because there's giant 30-inch lake trout up there that will smash this plug. You know? So yeah, trout will bite them too. That's for sure.
Yeah, trout get a nice reputation, but they're a predatory fish too. Like up the Cummins and all. So, all right, we'll go to the next one. Oh, so this one I'm really excited to see too, because this is the glide bait. This is one that looks more like a trout. Okay, so another question is throwing them in there. Do you have to be careful when you throw these lures into the water?
I was muted again. What is the question?
So one of the things I've heard is you got to be careful throwing them in because you can bust off the tail, you can just break them or loosen them, ruin their joints. So like when you toss it into the water, do you normally like troll with it or sometimes do you throw them?
These big baits I cast. I mean, that big one weighs 12 ounces. I mean, that's a heavy lure. I had to buy myself another new swim bait rod just to handle that weight. And yeah, things happen. I didn't check my line. I had a nick in it or something one day when I was out fishing that lure with a friend. And you have to really put everything into it. You have to load that rod and to get it to go far. And as soon as it got to the end of the stroke of the cast, pop! I heard the pop, and I know the cove. I think there's one of those laying out in the river somewhere, sank to the bottom, and we were going to try to use a magnet to get it back up. But yeah, there's a lot of, for myself, there's a lot of things I had to learn along the way. I learned that bait is so heavy, the pins and screws that make up the hinge, you couldn't buy anything. I couldn't buy anything heavy enough online that wouldn't bend. Like I would cast it 20, 30 times times, and from it smacking the water, it would bend the screws because it's so heavy. So I have a welder friend who helped me make my own custom screws that are super thick and strong, and it's all good to go now. Tails, the very end of the tail on that one is a heavy saltwater plastisol rubber. It's like rubber that they make saltwater goes out of, so it's very tear resistant with all my tails. But if you do cast it into a rock, it'll crack. I've had some of my smaller baits that I make have a hard tail, and I had a friend throw it right into a rock, and there's no helping it. It's just a urethane plastic. It's going to snap. So you definitely got to be careful with them.
Awesome. Yeah, actually, that is the good point we haven't brought up yet. These baits are all, let's see the other one. We're looking at half a pound to a pound for each of these. You want to definitely get a stronger spinning rod. I want to say medium to heavy action, and weight for the line like 30 pounds, right? Like go a little extra with the braided line or monofilament.
Yeah, like for the big, if I'm planning on fishing for big fish, all those rods have 30-pound test. If it's mono or fluoro, I usually build to save money because fluorocarbon's expensive. I usually fill half my spool because it's like a huge swim bait reel. It holds a lot. I forget like 250 to 300 yards. So I'll fill the first half of it with braid, and then tie a nice knot and fill the rest of it with fluorocarbon, or do the bottom half with mono because it's cheaper, and then top it off with fluorocarbon. Or
Awesome.
just you could use mono for the whole spool. I like fluorocarbon for some reason. It's more has more give to it for me. Yeah, but a heavy rod. Just check the rod. Every rod has a rating on it for how much weight of a lure it can handle. That's why I said I had to go buy a new rod that handles up to 14-ounce weight when you cast. So what did you say?
I had to check the ones that we have for our future bass classes within Dow. I only got the medium action, so these will not monster baits yet.
But what's the rating for the ounces? Does it say lure? What's the lure rating on your rod? It should say lure.
Yeah, this one didn't. Oh wait, probably down here.
Yeah, it'll say lure. Wait.
No?
No?
I'm gonna have to look it up. This one's the Luger. It's a 5:1 ratio.
On the rod itself, there should be a rating on the rod.
The rod says medium.
Isn't there something that says ounces on there? No?
Not on this one. I remember it was on the reel too, like when we were looking at the reels, but this one's only 6 pounds.
Okay.
Fine.
That one
But
that one might be able to handle my 9-inch plug is only 3.5 ounces, so it might handle that one.
All right, we'll have to try it.
And that smallest lure, it's crazy how even my 9-inch lure has caught me 18-pound fish, so they still go after it's bigger, but people look at the 9-inch lure and go, this is so big, and I go, looks small to me these days. I've been building them so long. I'm making monster ones now, so those look like small beans to me.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to go into a little more on like why they work too, and then have Tony, we'll turn off the screen sharing and then have you show them next to your head how big these things are too. But the reason these are working out on the river is like we were talking about the tail and the balanced weight so that it swims like an actual fish. And then I wanted to ask to kind of hear the lure in the water. Is it just the connection
Some of the glide bait, you hear the tapping, you hear the hinge bumping, and sometimes you'll hear the hooks tapping the lure lightly. But when I make the plugs, the more erratic style, I actually put knockers in those. There's internal knockers, so they click. They go click, 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 click. And I did that because of my experience with just regular lake fishing for the stripers. They destroy it. They destroy topwater lures that make noise, and crankbaits that click, click, and make noise. So I decided to put a clicker in my plugs, and they've had good success with their clicking noise too.
Yeah, definitely. That's like a rattle trap, right?
Yep, yep. It was
And I
actually
have to,
it was actually inspired by my mom because she bought me a small crankbait that was being discontinued. She goes, I found all these on sale, and I go, okay, and she gave them to me, and it had like a cylinder all the way through the lure, like a little metal chamber with a ball in it. So I made my own version of that bigger for my lures, and it's great. I love it. I call it my 2-penny knocker because it's made with 2 pennies.
that's awesome. And like I was saying, I was doing a bunch of research on where this works, and based on like what I've seen from the guys using your lures and you out on the water too, is looking along the brush, from bass fishing, right? They're the fish hide in the brush and then come out to strike. Those are some of my favorite videos.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the cool things that I had heard too is that they can just be down deep in the water too. And do have awesome volunteer projects, and one of them was with our lake mead biologist this summer, and we actually got to scuba dive, or not scuba, sorry, just snorkel through the coves, and I highly recommend that to anyone with warm water out and learn about fish and literally just watch them, because you're so stealthy through the water. Literally, we had fish right below us. It was so cool. And from the top, it doesn't look like anything, but once we got going, we found like all these drop-offs, and it may seem like water, but it's actually, there's going to be a drop-off, especially as we've seen with Lake Mead and all the changes. I'm just going to start taking more pictures as I go out there. But we're finding islands out in the middle of nowhere where normally seem like open water, but those are the places to find. So take a waterproof kit, get out there and snorkel and look down before it gets late in the summer, around May, before it gets busy out there. Definitely check out your waters, like I say with a lot of our videos. Know before you go, but I see you out in the middle of next year, right?
Can I add to that, Abby?
Yes, please.
Your microphone's cutting out a little bit. It's funny you say that, ledges and sit low, because everyone complains on the river, when they lower the river for the razorbacks and they do all their biology stuff. Everyone's complaining about the low river. I love the low river because I don't use computers, so I don't know depth and this. When the river is really low, I go take mental notes, and I've seen spots in the river where there's like almost like a rolling dune, and the fish will sit right there at the bottom of that hill, and they wait for the trout to come, and they ambush it, So yeah, you're right. They sit down low and they wait, or they hug structure, and I like it when the lake. I hate that the lake is low, but I like it when the river's low, because then I can take my notes and remember places where they sit. I can see the fish schooling and swimming in these weird spots, or I catch one and I know it's sitting up against a ledge. So yeah, they definitely do that. They definitely sit along ledges and weeds and weed lines and stuff.
Definitely. I'm actually kicking myself now for not pushing for some of the video from Deborah to show you guys tonight on where to cast these lures. Yeah, it was neat. The bluegill and green sunfish were definitely all along the little shrubbage right underneath, but the bass were actually sometimes shooting. I kind I pushed them around, but then they'd shoot straight down the cove. But there were drop-offs on either side. And then the littler bass were all along the drop-offs a little shallower, but it was pretty warm, like it was warm, pretty neat. We're putting Tony's email out there. I forgot to double check if this was fully open. So we're putting Tony's email out there. If anyone wants to try these out and fill out the survey on the way out.
Abby, they can find me just my name on Facebook too, and just send me a message there also.
Awesome. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for hosting, you guys. Oh yeah, there we go. Tony's going to show us how awesome and huge these are. Oh, it's that one, like 10 inches and then 12 to 16.
11 inches, and this is that 16-inch triple. Right next to my face, big. I got clicking action. Yeah, they're big. This one's 9 inches.
Oh yeah, so don't go any smaller than that.
That's pretty much stalker size on the river.
Exactly, and most of our ponds. So yeah, you can use the lures, these rainbow imitators on anywhere that, well, rainbows eat rainbows sometimes too, but even like brown trout are hybrids. So any of those places, they're all predatory. Cummins Lake has pike. Definitely want those guys out of there. So this is time to take monster lures out there too and entice the pike through the channel. Get them out of there unless they have a pit tag. We leave those in there.
I might have to paint some in bright colors for the pike. They like bright colors.
Oh yeah. Let me see. I did pull that video up. Had it. Let's see if I can share that. That was the one I was going to show earlier. There we go. Let me see if I can share. There it is. Oh yeah, definitely an awesome trout pattern.
That's a friend of mine's. That's his signature pattern. I only paint it for him. He goes down to the river and gets a lot of fish on that bait.
And that, yeah, lots of action where they're feeding on rainbows. All right, well, I hope this was informative for everybody. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for hosting tonight, Tony. And we'll have our next there's our emails again. Next talk is all about native trout, which are going to be the smaller ones this time. The next talk, that's at 7 o'clock after dinner. Thank you all. Have a very good night. If there's any more questions, let us know.